If you spend more time worrying about what others think. If you measure your worth by external validation. If you've lost touch with who you truly are. If you feel exhausted from trying to be everything to everyone. If you've forgotten what brings you joy. If your decisions are based on fear of judgment rather than personal truth. This message is for you. In a world that constantly demands your attention, focusing on yourself is not selfish. It is survival. Every day, you are pulled in different directions. Social media tells you who to be. Society tells you what to achieve. Other people tell you what matters. The news tells you what to fear. Trends tell you what to want. Influencers tell you what success looks like. But somewhere in all that noise, you forgot to ask yourself what you want. You became so busy meeting expectations that you stopped setting your own. You became so focused on fitting in that you forgot what makes you different. You became so concerned with being liked that you stopped being authentic. You started living for approval instead of living for alignment. You started measuring your day by productivity instead of peace. You started judging your worth by accomplishments instead of presence. Focusing on yourself is not about ignoring others. It is about remembering that you cannot pour from an empty cup. It is about understanding that the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. It is about recognizing that when you lose yourself, you lose the foundation upon which everything else stands. Your career suffers when you are disconnected from yourself. Your relationships suffer when you do not know what you need. Your health suffers when you ignore your limits. Your joy suffers when you live for others. 1. Your energy is your most valuable resource. You only have so much energy each day. Every conversation takes energy. Every commitment takes energy. Every worry takes energy. Every notification takes energy. Every decision takes energy. Every interaction takes energy. When you give your energy to everyone else, you are left depleted. And depletion is not just tiredness. It is a disconnection from yourself. When you are depleted, you cannot think clearly. You cannot feel deeply. You cannot create meaningfully. You cannot respond wisely. You become reactive instead of intentional. You become irritable instead of patient. You become numb instead of present. Focusing on yourself means protecting your energy. It means saying no to things that drain you. It means stepping back from people who take without giving. It means choosing rest over productivity when your body needs it. It means setting boundaries around your time and attention. It means recognizing that not every request deserves your yes. It means understanding that unavailability is sometimes the most loving thing you can offer yourself. Your energy is not unlimited. You are not a machine that can run endlessly without maintenance. You are not a resource meant to be extracted from until nothing remains. You are a human being with limits, needs, and a nervous system that requires rest. When you ignore those limits, your body keeps the score. Exhaustion becomes chronic. Stress becomes stored in your muscles. Resentment builds in your heart. Clarity fades from your mind. Energy management is self-care. It is the foundation of every other goal you have. Because without energy, you cannot pursue your dreams. Without energy, you cannot be present for the people you love. Without energy, you cannot show up as your best self. And protecting your energy is not about being cold or distant. It is about being intentional. It is about asking yourself, does this align with who I am becoming? Does this nourish me or drain me? Does this deserve my precious time and attention? When you begin to treat your energy as sacred, everything changes. You stop overcommitting. You stop people-pleasing. You stop saying yes out of guilt. You stop sacrificing your well-being for temporary approval. And you start living with intention. You start choosing quality over quantity. You start protecting your peace like the treasure it is. 2. You cannot control how others see you. You can spend your entire life trying to impress people and still be misunderstood. You can try to please everyone and still be criticized. You can dim your light to make others comfortable and still be too much for some, not enough for others. You can explain yourself repeatedly and still be misinterpreted. You can show your kindness and still be called difficult. You can set boundaries and still be called selfish. The truth is simple. People will form opinions based on their own perspective, not your reality. They see you through the lens of their experiences, their wounds, their biases, their expectations, their insecurities, their beliefs about how people should be. And no matter what you do, you cannot control that lens. You cannot force someone to see your intentions. You cannot make someone understand your journey. You cannot convince someone to respect you if they have decided not to. When you focus on yourself, you stop performing. You stop seeking approval. You stop editing who you are to fit someone else's expectations. You stop shrinking to make others feel bigger. You stop explaining yourself to people who are not listening. You stop defending your choices to those who have already judged you. You accept that not everyone will understand you. And that is okay. Because the only opinion that truly shapes your life is your own. What you think about yourself becomes your reality. If you see yourself as unworthy, you will accept less than you deserve. If you see yourself as incapable, you will not try. If you see yourself through the critical eyes of others, you will never feel enough. But when you focus on yourself, you reclaim the power to define who you are. You decide what your values are. You decide what success means to you. You decide what kind of person you want to become. You decide which voices to listen to and which to let go. And this does not mean you ignore all feedback. It means you learn to discern between constructive insight and projection. Constructive feedback comes from people who want to see you grow. Projection comes from people who want to see you conform. Constructive feedback is specific and actionable. Projection is vague and judgmental. Constructive feedback comes from a place of care. Projection comes from a place of discomfort. When you focus on yourself, you develop the wisdom to know the difference. You listen to feedback that helps you improve. You release criticism that only seeks to control. And you understand that living for applause is exhausting. Because applause is conditional. It depends on performance. It shifts with trends. It disappears when you make mistakes. It demands that you stay small, acceptable, and predictable. But living for yourself is freeing. It allows you to evolve. It allows you to make mistakes and learn. It allows you to be complex, layered, and real. It allows you to grow beyond who others expected you to be. It allows you to evolve. It allows you to make mistakes and learn. It allows you to be complex, layered, and real. It allows you to grow beyond who others expected you to be. The moment you stop trying to control how others see you is the moment you start living authentically. 3. Growth happens in solitude. Society celebrates busyness. It glorifies being surrounded by people. It makes you feel guilty for needing time alone. It equates solitude with loneliness. It treats alone time as something to avoid rather than embrace. But growth does not happen in the noise. It happens in quiet moments when you reflect. It happens when you sit with your thoughts instead of avoiding them. It happens when you ask yourself hard questions. It happens when you journal without censoring. It happens when you walk without your phone. It happens when you create space for silence. Who am I becoming? What do I actually want? Am I living for myself or for others? What patterns keep repeating in my life? What am I avoiding that I need to face? What do I need to let go of to move forward? Solitude is not loneliness. It is clarity. Loneliness is the ache of disconnection. Solitude is the practice of reconnection with yourself. Loneliness comes from feeling unseen by others. Solitude comes from learning to see yourself. When you spend time with yourself, you discover parts of you that were buried under other people's voices. You discover what you truly enjoy, not what you are supposed to enjoy. You discover what you value, not what you were taught to value. You discover what brings you peace, not what looks peaceful to others. You discover your authentic voice beneath the performance. In solitude, you are not performing. There is no one to impress. No one to please. No one to convince. No role to play. You can drop the mask. You can be messy. You can be uncertain. You can be contradictory. You can be fully, imperfectly human. And in that space of non-performance, real growth happens. You begin to notice patterns you could not see before. You begin to understand why you react the way you do. You begin to see connections between past pain and present behavior. You begin to recognize what needs healing. Solitude creates the space for introspection. And introspection creates the awareness necessary for transformation. You cannot change what you cannot see. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot grow if you are constantly distracted. Modern life has made distraction the default. There's always something to watch. Always something to scroll. Always someone to message. Always noise to fill the silence. And when you never pause, you never process. Experiences pile up without integration. Emotions build up without release. Thoughts race without resolution. You become a stranger to yourself. You lose touch with your intuition. You lose awareness of your needs. You lose connection with your inner voice. But solitude rebuilds that connection. It slows you down enough to hear yourself think. It creates space for emotions to surface and be felt. It allows you to integrate your experiences and learn from them. It reminds you that you are not just what you do or who you are to others. You are a complex, evolving being with an inner world that deserves attention. And that inner world holds wisdom. It holds the answers you have been searching for externally. It holds the clarity you have been seeking from others. It holds the peace you have been chasing through achievement. But you can only access it in stillness. When you focus on yourself through solitude, you develop a relationship with yourself that becomes your anchor. You learn to trust your own judgment. You learn to comfort yourself in difficult moments. You learn to guide yourself when you feel lost. You stop needing constant external validation because your internal foundation is solid. 4. Your goals should reflect your values, not trends. The world will always tell you what success looks like. A certain job. A certain lifestyle. A certain appearance. A certain timeline. A certain income level. A certain relationship status. A certain number of followers. A certain type of home. A certain level of achievement by a certain age. But those definitions are not universal. What brings someone else joy might drain you. What someone else values might feel empty to you. What looks impressive on social media might feel hollow in real life. What society celebrates might not align with your soul. Focusing on yourself means defining success on your own terms. It means pursuing goals that align with your values, not what looks impressive to others. It means building a life that feels right, even if it does not look like anyone else's. It means choosing depth over appearance. It means choosing meaning over status. It means choosing fulfillment over validation. Comparison is the thief of joy. When you measure your life against someone else's highlight reel, you forget that you are seeing a curated version of their reality. You see the promotion but not the sacrifice. You see the relationship but not the compromise. You see the achievement but not the cost. You see the smile but not the struggle. And you begin to feel inadequate. Not because you are failing, but because you are comparing your behind the scenes to their final edit. You are comparing your entire journey to their best moment. You are comparing your insecurities to their confidence. You are comparing your beginning to their middle. And in doing so, you lose sight of your own path. When you focus on yourself, you stop running someone else's race. You stop chasing goals that were never yours to begin with. You stop pursuing dreams that belong to your parents, your peers, or society. You stop living a life designed by external expectations. And you start asking the questions that matter. What do I value most in life? What brings me genuine fulfillment? What am I willing to sacrifice for, and what am I not? What does a meaningful life look like to me, not to others? These questions require honesty. Because sometimes, the life you think you want is just the life you are told to want. Sometimes, the goals you are chasing are goals you adopted without questioning. Sometimes, the person you are trying to become is not who you truly are. And there is tremendous courage in admitting that. There is freedom in saying, "This does not fit me anymore. This is not what I want. This is not who I am." When you focus on yourself, you give yourself permission to change direction. You give yourself permission to let go of goals that no longer serve you. You give yourself permission to redefine what success means. You give yourself permission to live differently than you planned. Because values evolve. Priorities shift. Life changes you. What mattered at 20 may not matter at 30. What drove you in your 20s may exhaust you in your 30s. What you thought you needed may not be what you need now. And that is not failure. That is growth. When you focus on yourself, you honor that growth. You do not cling to outdated versions of yourself. You do not force yourself into goals that no longer fit. You do not chase achievements that leave you feeling empty. You align your actions with your values. You ask yourself, does this goal reflect who I am now? Does this align with what I care about? Does this bring me closer to the life I want to live? And if the answer is no, you have the courage to let it go. Because living a life built on someone else's values is exhausting. You are constantly performing. Constantly seeking approval. Constantly feeling like something is missing. But living a life built on your own values is liberating. You feel grounded in your choices. You feel aligned with your actions. You feel at peace with your path. 5. You are responsible for your own healing. No one is coming to save you. Not your parents. Not your partner. Not your friends. Not time itself. Not success. Not validation. Not a perfect relationship. Not a new job. Not a different city. Healing is your responsibility. That does not mean you cannot ask for help. It means you must be the one to take the first step. You must be the one to set boundaries. You must be the one to seek therapy, support, or change. You must be the one to choose healing over comfort. You must be the one to do the hard inner work. You must be the one to face what you have been avoiding. And that is difficult. Because it is easier to wait. Easier to hope that time will heal you. Easier to believe that someone else will fix you. Easier to stay in familiar pain than face unfamiliar growth. But waiting keeps you stuck. Waiting gives your power away. Waiting turns you into a victim of your circumstances. Waiting makes your healing dependent on external change. And external change is not guaranteed. People may never apologize. Justice may never come. The past cannot be undone. Others may never see your pain. If you wait for those things to heal, you may wait forever. When you focus on yourself, you stop waiting. You stop blaming. You stop replaying the past. You stop needing closure from people who cannot give it. You take ownership of your present and your future. And that is where true power lives. Not in what happened to you. Not in who hurt you. Not in what you lost. But in how you choose to respond. Healing is not about forgetting. It is about releasing the hold the past has on your present. Healing is not about pretending it did not hurt. It is about learning to carry the hurt without letting it define you. Healing is not about becoming who you were before. It is about becoming who you are meant to be after. And healing is not linear. There will be days when you feel whole. And days when you feel broken again. There will be moments of clarity. And moments of confusion. There will be progress. And setbacks. But setbacks are not failures. They are part of the process. When you focus on yourself, you learn to be patient with your healing. You do not rush it. You do not judge it. You do not compare your timeline to anyone else's. You honor your pace. You understand that healing takes time. That some wounds are deeper than others. That some pain needs to be felt before it can be released. And you give yourself permission to feel. To grieve what was lost. To mourn the person you used to be. To acknowledge the pain you have carried. Because healing begins with acknowledgement. You cannot heal what you refuse to see. You cannot release what you deny. You cannot transform what you suppress. When you focus on yourself, you face the truth. Not the story you tell others. Not the version that makes you look strong. Not the narrative that avoids vulnerability. The real truth. The truth about how much it hurt. The truth about what you needed and did not receive. The truth about the patterns you keep repeating. The truth about the ways you have hurt yourself and others. And facing that truth requires courage. Because it means letting go of blame. It means releasing victimhood. It means accepting your role in your own pain. Not to punish yourself. Not to take on guilt that is not yours. But to reclaim your power. Because when you accept responsibility for your healing, you are no longer at the mercy of external circumstances. You are no longer waiting for apologies. You are no longer dependent on validation. You are no longer controlled by the past. You become the agent of your own transformation. And transformation is possible. No matter how broken you feel. No matter how long you have been stuck. No matter how many times you have tried and failed. Healing is always available to you. It is not something you earn. It is something you choose. It is choosing to go to therapy even when it feels uncomfortable. It is choosing to set boundaries even when it feels selfish. It is choosing to forgive yourself even when you feel unworthy. It is choosing to let go even when you want to hold on. It is choosing growth even when comfort is easier. When you focus on yourself, you prioritize your healing. You invest in it. You protect it. You honor it. You understand that healing is not a luxury. It is a necessity. 6. Investing in yourself is never wasted. Time spent improving yourself is never time wasted. Learning a new skill. Reading books that challenge your thinking. Taking care of your physical health. Working on your mental and emotional well-being. Developing your creative abilities. Expanding your knowledge. Building your confidence. Strengthening your discipline. These are not luxuries. They are foundations. When you invest in yourself, you increase your capacity. You become more resilient. You become more confident. You become more aligned with who you want to be. You become more equipped to handle challenges. You become more capable of creating the life you envision. You become more valuable to yourself and to others. And everything else in your life improves as a result. Your relationships become healthier. Because when you understand yourself, you communicate better. When you regulate your emotions, you respond rather than react. When you set boundaries, you teach others how to treat you. When you fill your own cup, you stop draining others. Your work becomes more meaningful. Because when you develop your skills, you create more options. When you build confidence, you pursue bigger opportunities. When you clarify your values, you choose work that aligns with them. When you strengthen your discipline, you follow through on your goals. Your peace becomes more stable. Because when you prioritize your well-being, you build resilience. When you process your emotions, they do not control you. When you care for your body, your mind functions better. When you create healthy habits, your life feels more manageable. You cannot build a strong life on a weak foundation. And you are the foundation. Your health, your mindset, your skills, your emotional regulation, your self-awareness, your discipline, your values. Everything else is built on top of that. If the foundation is weak, everything else crumbles. A relationship cannot save you if you do not know who you are. A job cannot fulfill you if you do not have clarity on what matters. Success cannot satisfy you if you are disconnected from yourself. But when you invest in yourself, the foundation strengthens. And from that solid ground, everything becomes possible. Investing in yourself looks different for everyone. For some, it is physical. Going to the gym. Eating nourishing food. Getting enough sleep. Moving your body regularly. For some, it is mental. Reading. Learning. Taking courses. Developing new skills. Challenging your thinking. For some, it is emotional. Going to therapy. Journaling. Practicing mindfulness. Processing past pain. Building emotional intelligence. For some, it is spiritual. Meditating. Connecting with nature. Exploring your beliefs. Finding meaning and purpose. For some, it is creative. Writing. Painting. Playing music. Expressing yourself. Exploring your imagination. The form does not matter. What matters is the intention. Are you investing in yourself or depleting yourself? Are you building yourself up or tearing yourself down? Are you prioritizing your growth or neglecting it? When you focus on yourself, you make the time. Not because you have extra time, but because you understand that investing in yourself is not selfish. It is strategic. It is the most important investment you will ever make. Because everything you want in life requires you to show up. To show up for your goals, you need discipline. To show up for your relationships, you need emotional health. To show up for your work, you need skills and confidence. To show up for your dreams, you need resilience. And you cannot develop those things without investing in yourself. You cannot expect to be disciplined if you never practice discipline. You cannot expect to be confident if you never challenge yourself. You cannot expect to be resilient if you never face discomfort. You cannot expect to be skilled if you never dedicate time to learning. Growth requires investment. It requires time. It requires effort. It requires consistency. It requires sacrifice. You must sacrifice immediate comfort for long-term growth. You must sacrifice mindless scrolling for intentional learning. You must sacrifice staying small for stretching beyond your limits. But these are not losses. They are exchanges. You exchange distraction for development. You exchange stagnation for growth. You exchange mediocrity for mastery. And the return on that investment is exponential. Because the skills you develop stay with you. The knowledge you gain compounds over time. The confidence you build opens doors. The health you cultivate gives you energy. The discipline you practice becomes automatic. Investing in yourself creates a ripple effect. It does not just benefit you. It benefits everyone around you. When you are healthier, you have more energy for others. When you are more skilled, you create more value. When you are more confident, you inspire others. When you are more emotionally regulated, your presence is calming. When you are more aligned with yourself, you give others permission to do the same. 7. You deserve your own attention. You give so much attention to others. You listen to their problems. You celebrate their wins. You support their dreams. You validate their feelings. You make time for their needs. You show up when they call. You offer advice when they ask. You hold space for their pain. But when is the last time you gave yourself that same attention? When is the last time you checked in with yourself and asked, how am I really feeling? What do I need right now? Am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Am I at peace? Am I living the life I want? Am I taking care of myself? You deserve your own care. You deserve your own kindness. You deserve your own attention. You deserve your own compassion. You deserve your own time. You deserve your own energy. Focusing on yourself is not selfish. It is self-respect. And when you respect yourself, you teach others how to treat you. When you prioritize your needs, others learn that your needs matter. When you set boundaries, others learn where your limits are. When you speak up for yourself, others learn to listen. When you walk away from disrespect, others learn you will not tolerate it. You set the standard for how you are treated. Not through words, but through actions. If you tolerate disrespect, you signal that disrespect is acceptable. If you ignore your needs, you signal that your needs do not matter. If you always put yourself last, you signal that you are not a priority. But when you focus on yourself, when you honor your needs, when you protect your peace, you signal that you are worthy. And people respond to that signal. Some will rise to meet it. They will adjust their behavior. They will respect your boundaries. They will value your time. Others will resist it. They will call you selfish. They will guilt you for changing. They will try to pull you back into old patterns. And that resistance reveals who they are. It reveals that they benefited from you neglecting yourself. It reveals that they preferred you dimmed. It reveals that they valued your service more than your well-being. When you focus on yourself, some relationships will change. Some will deepen. Some will fade. Some will end. And that is okay. Because a relationship that requires you to abandon yourself is not a relationship worth keeping. You deserve attention from yourself. Not just when you are broken and need fixing. Not just when you are sick and need healing. Not just when you are overwhelmed and need a break. You deserve attention simply because you exist. You deserve to check in with yourself daily. You deserve to ask yourself what you need. You deserve to honor your feelings. You deserve to celebrate your wins. You deserve to comfort yourself in pain. You deserve to be your own support system. Because the relationship you have with yourself is the longest relationship you will ever have. It begins the day you are born. It ends the day you die. And yet, it is often the most neglected relationship. You spend more time thinking about what others think of you than what you think of yourself. You spend more energy managing others' emotions than processing your own. You spend more time caring for others' needs than acknowledging your own. And slowly, you become a stranger to yourself. You do not know what brings you joy anymore. You do not know what you need to feel safe. You do not know what your boundaries are. You do not know what your dreams are. You have become so externally focused that you lost the internal connection. But that connection can be rebuilt. It starts with attention. Paying attention to how you feel. Paying attention to what you need. Paying attention to what drains you and what fuels you. Paying attention to your body's signals. Paying attention to your emotional patterns. Paying attention to your thoughts and beliefs. When you give yourself attention, you begin to understand yourself. You begin to see what you have been ignoring. You begin to hear what you have been silencing. You begin to feel what you have been numbing. And in that understanding, healing happens. You can only heal what you acknowledge. You can only change what you see. You can only grow when you pay attention. When you focus on yourself, you become your own best friend. You become the person who shows up for you. The person who believes in you. The person who comforts you. The person who celebrates you. The person who protects you. You stop waiting for others to fill roles they were never meant to fill. You stop expecting your partner to complete you. You stop expecting your friends to fix you. You stop expecting your parents to validate you. You stop expecting the world to make you feel worthy. You become whole on your own. And from that wholeness, you build relationships that enhance your life, rather than complete it. You attract people who respect you, because you respect yourself. You attract people who value you, because you value yourself. You attract people who see you, because you see yourself. There's a difference between self-focus and self-absorption. Self-absorption is ego-driven. It ignores others and sees only itself. It lacks empathy and awareness of how actions affect others. It operates from a place of entitlement and superiority. It demands attention without offering presence. It takes without giving. It talks without listening. Self-focus is intentional. It recognizes that to show up for others, you must first show up for yourself. It operates from a place of wholeness, not emptiness. It gives from overflow, not depletion. It sets boundaries out of respect, not rejection. It prioritizes self-care as a foundation for caring for others. You cannot be present for others if you are mentally exhausted. You cannot give love if you do not feel it within yourself. You cannot guide others if you are lost. You cannot offer support if your own foundation is crumbling. You cannot hold space for others if you have no space within yourself. Focusing on yourself creates capacity. It creates energy, clarity, and strength. It creates emotional availability. It creates mental bandwidth. It creates the inner resources needed to contribute meaningfully. And from that place, you can contribute more meaningfully to the world around you. Your presence becomes more grounded. Your actions become more intentional. Your words become more thoughtful. Your support becomes more genuine. Because you are no longer running on empty. You are no longer giving from a place of obligation or guilt. You are no longer overextending yourself to prove your worth. You are showing up from a place of wholeness. And wholeness does not mean perfection. It does not mean having it all figured out. It does not mean never struggling. Wholeness means you are integrated. You acknowledge all parts of yourself. The strong parts and the vulnerable parts. The healed parts and the wounded parts. The confident parts and the insecure parts. You do not hide your humanity. You do not perform an impossible standard. You do not pretend to be unaffected by life. You show up as you are. And that authenticity creates deeper connections. Because people do not connect with perfection. They connect with realness. They connect with vulnerability. They connect with someone who is willing to be seen. When you focus on yourself, you develop the courage to be seen. Not as a curated version. Not as a performance. Not as who you think you should be. But as who you actually are. Flawed. Growing. Evolving. Uncertain at times. Clear at others. And that honesty gives others permission to do the same. Curb the pressure to be everything to everyone. Modern life conditions you to believe you must always be available, always responsive, always helpful, always accommodating, always online, always reachable, always ready to drop everything for others. But constant availability creates constant depletion. Your nervous system never rests. Your mind never stops processing. Your attention is constantly fragmented. Your energy is constantly pulled in different directions. You cannot be everything to everyone. You cannot be the perfect employee who works overtime without complaint. You cannot be the perfect friend who is always available at any hour. You cannot be the perfect partner who never has needs of their own. You cannot be the perfect parent who sacrifices everything without resentment. You cannot be the perfect child who meets every expectation. And trying to do so leads to resentment, exhaustion, and disconnection from yourself. Resentment builds when you give without receiving. Exhaustion accumulates when you never rest. Disconnection deepens when you ignore your own needs. You become bitter about the very things you once chose. You become angry at people for needing you. You become numb to your own feelings. You become lost in roles and forget who you are beneath them. Boundaries are not walls. They are guidelines that protect your peace. They are not about rejecting others. They are about respecting yourself. They are not about being cold or distant. They are about being sustainable. When you focus on yourself, you honor your limits. You protect your time. You preserve your energy for what truly matters. You learn to say no without guilt. You learn to prioritize without apology. You learn to disappoint others without abandoning yourself. And this does not make you a bad person. It makes you a healthy person. Because healthy people have boundaries. Healthy people know their limits. Healthy people do not martyr themselves for approval. They understand that sustainable giving requires sustainable capacity. You cannot give indefinitely without replenishing. You cannot pour out without pouring in. You cannot support others if you are collapsing under your own weight. When you focus on yourself, you become more effective in all your roles. You become a better friend because you are not depleted. You become a better partner because you are not resentful. You become a better parent because you are not exhausted. You become a better colleague because you have boundaries. Quality over quantity. Presence over performance. Depth over breadth. The fear of being called selfish. Many people avoid focusing on themselves because they fear judgment. They fear being called selfish, cold, or distant. They fear being accused of not caring. They fear being seen as difficult or demanding. They fear losing relationships if they stop overgiving. But there is a quiet tragedy in losing yourself to avoid criticism. There is a cost to always putting yourself last. That cost is your joy, your passion, your sense of self, your mental health, your physical health, your peace of mind. And no amount of approval from others can replace what you lose. When you abandon yourself, you can have everyone's approval and still feel empty. You can be loved by many and still feel unseen. You can be praised for your selflessness and still feel resentful. Because external validation cannot fill an internal void. When you do not value yourself, no amount of others valuing you will be enough. When you do not respect yourself, no amount of others respecting you will feel real. When you do not know yourself, no amount of others knowing you will feel satisfying. Prioritizing yourself is not about ignoring others. It is about recognizing that you matter too. Your needs are valid. Your feelings are important. Your time is valuable. Your energy is precious. Your well-being is essential. You do not need to earn the right to take care of yourself. You do not need to justify resting. You do not need permission to prioritize your health. You do not need to prove your worth before setting boundaries. You matter simply because you exist. And anyone who makes you feel guilty for taking care of yourself does not have your best interests at heart. They have their own interests at heart. They benefit from you being depleted. They benefit from you being available. They benefit from you not having boundaries. But a relationship that requires you to neglect yourself is not a healthy relationship. It is a transactional relationship. A one-sided relationship. A relationship built on what you can provide, not who you are. When you focus on yourself, you begin to see these dynamics clearly. You begin to see who supports your growth and who resists it. You begin to see who respects your boundaries and who violates them. You begin to see who values you and who values what you do for them. And that clarity, while sometimes painful, is liberating. Because it allows you to make informed choices. You can choose to invest in relationships that are reciprocal. You can choose to distance yourself from relationships that are draining. You can choose to prioritize people who prioritize you. And that is not selfish. That is self-preservation. Rediscovering who you are. When you have spent years focusing on others, you may not even recognize yourself anymore. You may not know what you enjoy. You may not know what you believe. You may not know what brings you peace. You may not know what excites you. You may not know what your dreams are. You have become so accustomed to molding yourself to fit others that you forgot your original shape. You have said yes so many times when you wanted to say no that you do not know what you actually want. You have performed so many versions of yourself that you do not know which one is real. Rediscovering yourself takes time. It requires quiet. It requires honesty. It requires patience. It requires experimentation. It requires permission to try things and change your mind. But it is one of the most important journeys you will ever take. Because living a life disconnected from yourself is not living at all. It is existing. It is surviving. It is going through the motions. But it is not thriving. When you focus on yourself, you begin the process of rediscovery. You start small. You notice what makes you feel light versus what makes you feel heavy. You notice what energizes you versus what drains you. You notice what feels aligned versus what feels forced. You experiment. You try new hobbies without pressure to be good at them. You explore interests without needing them to be productive. You spend time alone without filling every moment with distraction. You listen. You listen to your body when it tells you to rest. You listen to your emotions when they signal something is wrong. You listen to your intuition when it guides you toward or away from something. You unlearn. You unlearn the belief that you must be productive to be worthy. You unlearn the belief that rest is laziness. You unlearn the belief that saying no is mean. You unlearn the belief that your value is tied to what you do for others. And slowly, you remember. You remember what you loved before the world told you what to love. You remember who you were before you learned to perform. You remember what mattered to you before you adopted others' values. This process is not quick. It is not linear. It is not always comfortable. There will be moments of confusion. There will be moments of grief for time lost. There will be moments of fear about what others will think. But there will also be moments of clarity. Moments of recognition. Moments of relief. Moments of coming home to yourself. Trust your own voice. You have spent so much time listening to others that you stop trusting your own voice. You doubt your decisions. You question your instincts. You seek validation before moving forward. You ask for advice when you already know the answer. You defer to others even when it does not feel right. But deep down, you know what feels right. You know what aligns with your truth. You know what drains you and what fuels you. You know when something is off. You know when you need to walk away. You know when you need to stay. Focusing on yourself means learning to trust that inner voice again. It means honoring your intuition. It means making choices that feel true to you, even when others do not understand. Even when others disapprove. Even when it is scary. Even when it is different from what you planned. Your inner voice is not loud. It does not shout. It does not demand. It whispers. It nudges. It feels. And it is easy to miss in the noise of life. But when you create space for it, when you slow down enough to listen, it guides you. It guides you toward what is aligned. It guides you away from what is harmful. It guides you toward growth. It guides you toward peace. Trusting yourself is not about always being right. It is about honoring your truth even when you make mistakes. It is about learning from your choices instead of regretting them. It is about taking ownership of your path instead of blaming others. It is about following your internal compass instead of external expectations. Focusing on yourself is not a single decision. It is 1,000 small choices. It is choosing to rest when your body asks for it. It is choosing to speak up when something does not feel right. It is choosing to walk away when you are not valued. It is choosing to stay when you are honored. It is choosing to protect your energy even when others want more. It is choosing to invest in yourself even when it feels indulgent. It is choosing to trust yourself even when others doubt you. Each choice builds on the last. Each choice strengthens your foundation. Each choice clarifies your path. Each choice brings you closer to the life you want to live. And over time, these choices compound. You begin to notice the shift. You feel lighter because you are no longer carrying others' expectations. You feel clearer because you are no longer clouded by external noise. You feel stronger because you have built a foundation within yourself. You feel more peaceful because you are aligned with who you are. The relationships that were draining begin to fade. The relationships that were nourishing begin to deepen. The goals that were imposed begin to lose their power. The goals that are authentic begin to excite you. The version of yourself that was performing begins to dissolve. The version of yourself that is real begins to emerge. And this emergence is not always comfortable. There will be people who do not understand. There will be people who resist your growth. There will be people who try to pull you back into old patterns. Let them. Let them be uncomfortable with your evolution. Let them struggle with your boundaries. Let them question your choices. Because their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself. Your responsibility is to honor your truth. Your responsibility is to protect your peace. Your responsibility is to live authentically. Your responsibility is to build a life that feels right to you. And when you do that, when you truly focus on yourself, something shifts in the universe. You stop attracting what you tolerate. You start attracting what you embody. You stop attracting people who need you to be small. You start attracting people who celebrate your growth. You stop attracting opportunities that deplete you. You start attracting opportunities that align with you. You stop attracting chaos. You start attracting peace. Because energy is magnetic. When you respect yourself, you attract respect. When you value yourself, you attract value. When you love yourself, you attract love. Not because the world magically changes, but because you change. You change what you accept. You change what you tolerate. You change what you pursue. You change how you show up. And that changes everything. Focusing on yourself is not the end of connection. It is the beginning of authentic connection. Because you can only truly connect with others when you are connected to yourself. You can only truly love others when you love yourself. You can only truly see others when you see yourself. This is not selfishness. This is wholeness. and wholeness is what the world needs. The world does not need more people who are depleted, resentful, and disconnected. The world needs people who are grounded, clear, and authentic. The world does not need more people who are performing. The world needs people who are being. The world does not need more people who are lost in others' expectations. The world needs people who are rooted in their own truth. So focus on yourself. Not because others do not matter, but because you matter too. Not because you should ignore the world, but because you cannot change the world if you have lost yourself in it. Not because self-focus is the goal, but because self-focus is the foundation. And from that foundation, everything becomes possible. Your dreams become achievable because you have the energy to pursue them. Your relationships become fulfilling because you are whole entering them. Your work becomes meaningful because it aligns with your values. Your peace becomes stable because it comes from within. You stop searching externally for what can only be found internally. You stop waiting for permission to live your life. You stop needing validation to trust yourself. You stop seeking completion from others. You become complete on your own. And from that completeness, you offer the world your most authentic gift. Not a performance. Not a sacrifice. Not a martyr. But a whole, grounded, authentic human being. Someone who has done the work. Someone who knows themselves. Someone who trusts themselves. Someone who values themselves. Someone who has learned that focusing on yourself is not the opposite of caring for others. It is the prerequisite.